Okay, maybe you should make a start because we've got a packed agenda, as always in BESS. My name is Matthew. This is Jeffrey. Stefan, our other co-chair, is not here. I'm not sure if he's going. Yes, he is dialed in.
Yeah, I'm connected remotely. Hello, guys.
Thank you. We can hear you loud and clear. And Mankamana, our secretary, is going to do the minutes. Thanks, Mankamana. Okay, here's the note well. Please read it and understand it. It covers everything you do here. Okay. Do you want to just, sorry, let's skip forward. Can you go back to the meeting tips? Thanks. Okay, so make sure, as I mentioned, that you've signed into the session on Meet Echo, either the desktop version or the mobile version. And use Meet Echo to join the mic queue, please, even for the mics in the room. And for remote participants, just unmute yourself when we've asked you to speak. Okay, the agenda is here. The only thing I wanted to mention on this, apart from it's very busy, is that we've got a little section on the charter update, but I think that's going to be quite short because we're not quite there yet with anything to really present to the working group. So we'll just make that very brief. I think we might get a few minutes back on that, I hope. Next slide. Why can't you see that? Why can't you see this? Okay, a couple of new RFCs published since the last IETF, 9746, which are the BGP VPN multi-home extensions for split horizon filtering, and 9744, EVPN VPWS flexible cross-connect service. So thank you to everyone who worked on that, and thanks to Gunter for helping to process this stuff very efficiently. We have 6 drafts in the RFC editor's queue. So once again, thank you, Gunter, for cranking the handle on that, and everybody in the authors for responding quickly to the feedback from the IESG on those. One of them is kind of stuck with a misref. Actually, I think there's a cross misref on those. The fast DF recovery and a virtual Ethernet segment are kind of tied together. I guess those are going to move forward fairly quickly now because they're now in the RFC, both in the RFC editor's queue. So that misref is not really valid anymore. I think there is one draft currently in IESG review, which is the SRv6 ARGS draft, arguments draft. I think there's been a few comments on that and a bit of discussion on that. So that is ongoing, I think. Do you want to? Even ADs have to go to the mic.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not raising hand, but yeah, it's on the tele as the author of the draft, not anything else. It's on the telechat.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have a list of them who are have been under working group last call or currently in Shepherd's review. There's one which is still waiting on our review from IDR. The EVPN control plane for Geneva, I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That one we sent you a review at the last time for the unequal LB. So I'm sorry, I should have waited till you finished.
No, go ahead.
So maybe it got lost, but glad to work on that.
Okay, thanks. And I think you also wanted to review the EVPN control plane for Geneva.
And again, that was reviewed before the last ITF and sent to you in October. Yep. You'll find the links on our IDR webpage. So if there's some disconnect, let me know and I'll be glad to do that. But we sent these reviews in October.
Thank you. I think the only author that I can see for that possibly is okay. Okay, you're author of that. You in the room? the VPN control plane for Genève. There was some comments from Sue on that. Could you give us an update, please?
Yeah, so yeah, I was pretty much waiting for Sammy to respond, but if he doesn't, yeah, I can have a look at it.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I think we need to set Jason probably on that. Thanks. The one other one I wanted to mention from this is the VPLS multi-homing draft, which we now have an editor for, which is great, and we will move that forward. I think Kriti's going to move that forward. So he's got the pen for that from the original editor. So that's great. So yes, that'll be resubmitted, and then we can send it, hopefully do a quick last call, tidy it up a bit, send it back to the IESG, get those code points allocated properly. Okay, Stefan.
Matthew, one thing, can you go back to the previous slide? On this EVP and IPVPN interworking draft, so we did a new working group last call, so we don't have any more comments. However, because the last IPR call was done a long time back, I raised a new one, and only Jorge replied. So we need to ensure that at least we get a new reply from each active author and contributor to this draft, so we can renew the IPR call and then move this draft to IESG.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have a list of documents potentially ready for working group last call. These are listed on the wiki. We keep the wiki updated when we get requests from the co-authors, and it appears that they're kind of ready to move forward. A couple of these have expired. Please try and keep your documents alive. You don't have to change anything in them, just resubmit them and increment the version number, because we can't last call anything that has expired. And we also, of course, like to see that there's still interest in the draft. Okay. So we believe all the comments have been addressed in the EVP and MVPN seamless interop draft. We will likely move that forward soon. The EVPN BFD draft, there were still outstanding comments, I think. There was some list discussion related to the routing area directorate review comments. I don't think that has concluded yet. Okay. When we do last call that, we will do that jointly with the BFD working group, or run it by the BFD working group for their input as well. Okay. I can't move it forward. You have to move it forward. We have a long queue for the adoption call. You see, our AD has been working so diligently to clear the backlog in the ISG that now we are the backlog. So, okay. Do you want to say anything about the first one, Jeffrey? Do you want to say anything about the first one? Because
actually, yeah, indeed, the first one, well, we talked about the last IETF already, that we believe the solution for the problem should be a different way, and I have not heard back any objection to that. We have put that into the RFC 6514 BESS draft, and McMahon will talk about that in his presentation. Once we've done that, the second draft in that list, we're not in a hurry to push for adoption.
okay. Stefan.
Yeah, one other thing regarding this NFFRR flag draft and the fast reroute, if I'm not mistaken, but I would like a confirmation from the offer, but I think there was an agreement from the last IETF meeting between the two documents to have a kind of merge, but I would like them to speak to ensure that we got to an agreement.
Okay.
Do we have Luke or Liu connected? Okay, if they are not
Anyone
there,
in the queue? If any of the authors are in the queue, they're not in the queue, please join the queue. Okay, I don't see them.
okay.
All right. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these not expired ones now. These are all clear on the data tracker. Okay, and we're out of time now for this, so I think it's Sue up as the first presenter.
Am I running the slides or are you running the slides, Jeffrey?
You can run it if you.
I think you still need to display them from here, right? Just display them from here. Go back to the list. Just click on that. So we'll display them.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, while it's being displayed, not to lose time, the purpose behind this talk is to help drafts do early review of drafts for IDR. You notice IDR chairs have been trying to get ahead of the curve instead of be behind it. Next slide. So one of the, in these reviews, we found some things were common with tunnel encapsulation attribute reviews. And I sent out to the working group a list of 6 drafts that are working group drafts and 5 drafts that are working group drafts and 1 draft that is a individual draft. And the goal is, if you can follow the guidelines, templates of information regarding tunnel encapsulation attributes, then it'll be a whole lot easier when we go to review. These are guidelines, and I've walked through a couple drafts to see that the guidelines. It's a template simply because it is easy for authors that are new to check into it. Next one. Okay, so that looks like Tiny Trent is not my friend today. I tried to put it in a table, so I will walk through it. So there are 3 types of things that need checking when you do tunnel encaps. Is my audio overrunning things? Is it too loud or is it just fine?
It's just fine to me.
Okay. So the first thing that people propose is they propose a new tunnel. Okay. The draft IETF BESS Secure EVPN has a new tunnel. The draft multicast, draft IETF BESS BGP multicast controller is working with the tunnel that's been assigned, but setting up new sub TLVs. So when you do a tunnel, you need to have a few things in the section so we can adhere to RFC 9012. So I've written this up as a template. You need a name. Please don't repeat things that have been there before. You need to indicate whether IANA has assigned the code, or if you're going to ask for it later, you need to give a good description. Now, here comes a couple things that don't seem to be as useful. And unfortunately, it looks like the template didn't work very hard. You need to give a list of mandatory and optional sub-TLVs. Please look up all the sub-TLVs. Don't just assume 9012 works. You might not use the 9012 ones. I believe That might be true of the two BESS drafts, and the Geneva draft has a sub-TLV. The next thing is tell the drafts that are not, and tell if it has validation. I believe my PDF had a better presentation on this. This seems to be broken as far as the presentation I can see here. Let me see if there's something else. Okay. Jeffrey, Zhang, if this is not coming through in the slides, I will send a new slide. I will work with this due to time as it is. Go to the next slide. Okay, here's the piece that many people leave out. Is there multiple TLVs of this particular tunnel type that might be included in a single BGP tunnel encapsulation? If so, are there interactions? For example, are you referring to data twice? Are you using one tunnel sub TLV in one tunnel TLV and something else? Please, if there's interaction, look at that. Finding that inside of your text is hard and takes a time. Security considerations. We've been kicked back from the security ADs when we don't specify critical information. So critical information is stuff about the infrastructure, which is usually something about the tunnel, that is being passed in the tunnel's sub-TLVs. You need to instruct the operators that they should protect this critical information. If you don't do that, the security ADs or the security director will kick back the draft to your working group, and that'll make us all unhappy. And lastly, give instructions on how to manage the tunnel. Hint, if you do a BGP LS monitors it, that happens for many SR tunnels. Okay, we're getting in IDR a lot of SR tunnels and BGP monitoring SR tunnels. If you do a draft like that, bundle them together so we can check them. So that's basically the information for a tunnel TLV. Go to the next slide. Okay, there's do's and don'ts. You know, don't use the same name for a sub TLV as you use for a tunnel. IANA goes a little crazy when they see that because they can't make it unique and we're all having problems. Use TBDXX if you haven't assigned the code so we can flag it. The rest of these, if you've written something, should be important, but a couple things are common mistakes. Don't give an AFI-SAFI. Don't forget to, let me try that in a positive way. Give the AFI-SAFI the tunnel TLV works for. Otherwise, you get a question back from us. Does this apply to just this one? Does it apply to all of them? There's a lot of AFI-SAFIs, and BGP is negotiated for AFI-SAFI. You don't have to, in the description of what it does, doesn't have to be in a template that says description. You can just point to a place in the draft, but the tunnel TLV section should at least point to another section in the draft saying, this is where I describe what AFI-SAFIs and how they're handled. Again, I've gone through the pros and cons of needing mandatory sub-TLVs, optional sub-TLVs, and non-supported sub-TLVs. For time, go ahead. Again, multi-tunnel interactions will cause things to get have a problem. You also have the joy of having the PMSI, PMSI tunnel. If you're having interactions with that, please try to mention it. Go ahead, Jeffrey. Sub TLVs.
Kia's in the list. You can wait. Okay. Go ahead, Susan.
Care, did I miss something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sub-TLVs. Please give a short name, give your code, IN or not. Tell in the encoding of the sub-TLV, the diagram, the description, the error handling. Again, you can mention it in one section or point to another, but we're looking for the information. And if you are saying this sub-TLV is mandatory, specify if it's mandatory for a particular tunnel or if you think it's optional for all tunnels. If you are linking it to a tunnel, say when this sub-TLV is not supported. For example, draft IETF IDR SR policy SAFI didn't support a whole bunch of the sub-TLVs that were in the 9012. If it's a validation, if this sub-TLV plays a part in validation, mention it. Next one. Okay. We'll skip the do's and don'ts. I think we don't need to do that. Someone, if you're using it, this is just a checklist. It's also on the wiki in the same form. Go ahead. And again, I think if in management considerations, consider if netconf yang is useful, and record sometimes if you're going beyond yang what needs to be there. Also consider with sub-TLVs if a set of information is critical in all use cases or in all tunnels. So please, I hope this is going to help us get through things. Next slide. Okay, PMSI is challenging. We need to make sure if you're using PMSI and TLV that we look at the RFC 9012 restrictions on PMSI and what it says. Now, you may choose to ignore them, but at least look at the PMSI comments in RFC 9012, and it usually says that PMSI should go first, but please at least explain what's going on if we've got it side by side. And I think we can stop there because I want to make sure to catch the comments. Look at the other drafts. Thanks to Caton, who went through draft IETF IDR SR policy SAFI, and Linda, who worked with me on SD-WAN, and Jeffrey, who worked with me on BESS multicast controller. Now, Care, did I miss something?
Khair Patel Arcus, speaking as a working group co-chair for IDR and probably a note to working group co-chairs here for the BESS is that on a slide 10 there is a reference made, but in past my meta comment is that we have used extended communities also as a placeholder to carry some tunnel information. I think one suggestion we'd like to give, which is and we'll make it very clear in this deck when we share it with you, is that there should be really a good reason why new proposals shouldn't be using tunnel and cap attributes. And as long as that is there, feel free to do that. But otherwise, leveraging tunnel and cap attributes as a placeholder moving forward allows you to do both, reduce the complexity and interdependencies between different attributes, both from standards as well as from implementations perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Care. That was a good point.
Okay.
Jorge Rodan, Nokia. Thank you, Sue, for this. I think it's very useful. One question that I had is, are you expecting us to have these templates in drafts where we are reusing the TLVs and sub-TLVs of RFC 9012, or is only for new TLVs and sub-TLVs?
If you're reusing the TLVs in a new tunnel, your tunnel has to have that discussion. So if you're using, so let me say that one more time. If you're using your sub-TLVs from RFC 9012 in a new tunnel, then your tunnel has to follow this format. Does that make sense?
Okay. I think
If you're, was there more to that question?
no, that I think that's understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, you're in the queue again. Is that something you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to reply to Jorge's comments that you probably are better off explaining this moving forward in the drafts if they're coming. And if you have an existing draft, some clarity would be helpful, or continue business as usual, but this would help.
Yes, the point is, the purpose behind this is guidelines so that we get through the reviews quickly. And on these drafts, I will walk through each of these drafts with you and even help ghostwrite it, because it takes us less time to do that up front than write long Shepherd reports. I think it's more effective. Okay, anything else? Then thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Go back to the chair slides. Okay. Can you just skip to that? So I just wanted to say a little bit about an activity we're kind of kicking off to revise the BESS charter. Okay. So our charter is extremely old and somewhat out of date, we think. And we've also been getting questions back during our ESG review about whether drafts are actually in charter or not. And there's been a bit of debate on some drafts on the list as to whether they're in charter or not. Most of the text, I think, in the charter, if not all of it, kind of dates from the formation of the working group out of the remains of L2 VPN and the L3 VPN working groups when those were closed. So we kind of took the BGP parts of those working groups that we're defining for BGP IP VPN and BGP VPLS and BGP Auto Discovery. And there were drafts around at that time kicking off the work in eVPN as well. The current charter that we have, now a lot of that work has progressed, and now there's been more services, for example, in SRv6 using BGP signaling that have come after that, and they're not reflected in the charter either. So it doesn't really reflect the current or recent work items of the working group, and it's pretty vague on the boundaries between what we do here and what we need to review with IDR in particular as well. Next slide. So what we clearly need to do is to define the services that are in scope of BESS now and going forward. And try and scope the work more tightly to protocol updates to those services. So the chairs are kind of working with the routing area ADs on an updated charter. We have some draft text, but we're not quite ready to circulate it yet. So the process that we'll take is that we obviously need to get working group consensus, or we would like to get working group consensus on this. So we'll post this to the list in the coming weeks, I think. And we would do some kind of work, effectively a working group last call on that text, and then that revised text we can take back to our AD and work with them, and then we'll have to go through a process in the IESG to get that charter approved. Okay. That's where we are. Any comments or questions? Kia.
Keyur Patel, Arcus. Can you go back to the last slide, please? I just want to make sure, be super clear. You would include different services like MVPN here, right? Or you're going to try and restrict the charter to just L3 VPNs and L2 VPNs?
Well, obviously we've done these SRv6 based L3, L2 VPNs as well. There is I think there's always been kind of a restriction that, or an assumption that the work that we have here was inherited from L3 VPN, L2 VPN, and it fits within what used to be called the provider provision VPN framework. So you have a PE and kind of the VPN essentially is delivered from the PE to a customer edge device. So it's not a CE VPN, it's a PE to PE VPN.
Yeah, but my meta question is you're going to keep the VPNs in the charter, not just restrict it to L3 and L2.
VPNs that fit that model.
Okay.
Yeah, in general. I've given an example list here. I mean, most of the work still at the moment is kind of updating and optimizing and making enhancements for multi-homing and resiliency and OEM and so on for these VPNs anyway. That's typically what we're doing, or for different data planes like SRv6. So it's, but we're not being completely restrictive. If we do some completely new VPN, then that's kind of out of charter at the moment, and we'd have to have a discussion in the working group as to whether or not we want to recharter to include that kind of VPN. So what I'm saying is it's not any service over, not any BGP signal service. It's restricted to certain types of VPNs.
Now asking you a question as a working group chair of BGP, would you punt that new work to BGP working group in that case, or where would the work belong?
Well, we don't know. I mean, because we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, Gunther van der Velden here as a routing AD. So what the plan would be for like new service that would be popping up at some point in time is to indeed, consider them as an extra line item actually in that new charter. So we would just extend it. What I've seen at least is that, adding a new item on top of what we have is quite a small change most of the time, which would go quite easy through the IESG also. So. Does that answer your question, Keyur?
I mean, I can take this to the mailing list, but what I would suggest is to make charter sort of flexible enough that, it would be helpful to authors coming in here and presenting, and rather than you telling them to go back to IESG every time amending the charter, that's also time consuming. So
Yeah.
putting some flexibility in here, or note to ADs, find a placeholder where people can go do that.
So if I think another way of putting that is bring it here first. We'll see if it fits. We'll see if it fits within the model here, and we'll have a discussion about whether we can extend the charter to include it.
Yeah, Gunther here again. It's really about finding a balance here between being the sinkhole of any service, which happens to use BGP to be part of this, or like being super restrictive. So it's finding a balance, and that is, the effort that we're going to be going through the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. Next is, I think we have Linda next.
I'm so glad you had this charter discussion, because that's the question I had for the presentation. Okay, so this is, oh, you have it, okay. So this is a very old work. This was put into IESG and then returned back to working group. And next page, please. So the background is they did a review, and they have comments, and then they have a few comments on the purpose of the document, the intended audience, and but the important one is really next page. is the document in the scope of BESS working group. Okay, so the document itself, we have addressed all the discuss points of IESG and updated the intended purpose. And originally, there was an attempt to merge it with the SD1 draft in the IDR working group. And during the director review, the directors recommended separating because this draft itself covers the listed several scenarios of SD1 and illustrate how do we use BGP to do the control and what are the gaps, what are the new things needed, what are the major gaps in there. And so with that, this down the requirement of in order to do BGP extension, what are needed. So if we merge this together with the SD1 discovery protocol, it's just become very heavy. And on top of that, there are other drafts like in RTG working group, there's a multi-segment SD1, which also depend on using BGP to distribute the information of the edge nodes, including the edge nodes immediately attached to gateway, and also the edge node exchanging information about their WAN port properties and some of the properties needed for establish the IPsec using BGP instead of using the original IKE v2, because that is assuming there's no secure connection between two edge nodes. And with the like L3 VPN deployment, there's already secure channel between the edge node and the controller. So a lot of the authentication, a lot of steps can be eliminated. So using BGP is much more efficient since BGP is already there to control other aspects of the exchanging the routes. So this document has lots of discussion on how the BGP is used in single segment SD1, multi-segment SD1, which are scattered in different working groups. So we think that it should be inside the BESS working group scope, especially based on the charter. I hope the charter, when you read charter, can include like hybrid over underlays like L3 VPN, L2 VPN over hybrid underlay, because that is getting very wide deployment today. It's not something new, it's being deployed, and it would be nice to have IETF to have that, a home to discuss that. So the question is whether this discussion is in the BESS working group or should we find somewhere else?
Hey, Lina, and thanks for doing all the rework here. So this draft came in as one of the first drafts when I, stepped up as an AD here. So I inherited, the whole approach here. So indeed, during the IESG ballot, process, there was like one technical item which was identified together with like a whole load of questions on the intent of the document and some other, different types of improvements, which could potentially be happening. And that combined with the fact that there seems to be, at least from what I've seen, a very detailed, review of each document, mapping it to the charter. There were some questions on that thing also. And actually, that's one of the reasons which triggered us to reinvestigate or refresh, the BESS charter, because all the other drafts coming after, the draft, what you have, which went through the BESS, pipeline itself, were also questionized from that perspective. So so now we are in that's the reason actually I send it back to have it worked upon. Now that the document is like refreshed in Swan words, I would suggest to go into the second step is to make sure that it is like reviewed well by the working group, to make sure that it that it reflects the quality of what the BESS working group actually stands for before sending it back to me. And from the charter perspective, because a lot of work actually has been done on this thing. It could potentially, if that is what the working group decides upon, being grandfathered into the charter, and say, okay, work upon the renewed charter, what we're intending to do, and and accept this thing as like a single line item. Okay, this document is included, for example. So,
Thank
but
you.
then again, it has to be discussed within the working group itself to see if we have sufficient expertise in the working group to review this document, as well, because that is, it needs to represent the quality of the BESS working group.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, I hope people can express your opinion on the mailing list. We do have seen some people already expressed, and so waiting for you guys, the chairs, to send out the updated charter, then we can continue the discussion.
I mean, I think what we'd like to see is as much review as possible of the new version of the draft that you've done that addressed the technical comments from the ISG, and also, various comments and review to improve the quality of it, so that it doesn't get bounced back next time as well.
Okay.
So basically, to make sure that we have the expertise in the working group to review it.
Okay, that's good. The ISG discuss points has been addressed, like individual messages. They're quite long emails, so it's really hard to go through them individually here. I did comment a few points here. Maybe next slide.
Yeah.
So I cannot even see the words, so tiny. So basically, here are some three major bullets here. The intended audience. Oh, that's much better. Yes. Okay. So the tunnel type. John Scott insists on this RFC 5566 using IPsec tunnel type being obsoleted. So the entire documents have to remove that reference. Any kind of IPsec tunnel type has to be removed. Another one is intended purpose for the encapsulated extended community. So the tunnel type we have to change. We have changed already to the SD-WAN hybrid tunnel type, and also improve the writing. I hope people, the community, the working group, can review that. And another one, major one, is the constraint route distribution from the route reflector perspective, and not to flood to all the edge nodes, only to the edge nodes which needed the information. And originally was using 4684 method, and now we have removed that already. Next page. The security consideration, that's another major comment. And so we have revised the security consideration to include, to address all the comments raised for that. We removed the BGP over TLS reference as well, because that document has been expired and nobody is following on that. So we removed that as well. Another one about anti-DDoS detailed mechanism. And we think that's really out of the scope. There are so many components involved to describe that. So that's removed. There are many, many more comments on the mailing list, and I hope people can review the document and see if those comments, discuss points has been properly addressed. Okay. So the next step is waiting for BESS charter, re-charter wording coming out, and we need another working group, last call. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is, I think, Ali.
Ali Sajasi Cisco, So while this draft is sitting in the working group last call, there were some questions raised regarding some of the areas which seems like it quite wasn't clear in the draft, and we took the opportunity to clarify it. And there were 3 clarifications made here, which I'm going to go over it. Next, please. So the 3 areas that we clarify in this rev relative to the previous rev is one, with respect to the mass withdrawal, that what we're going to, when there is an Ethernet segment failure and we have a mass withdrawal, then with respect to the withdrawing the individual MAC IP messages to clean up the BGP, how do we send those? So that's one clarification which I'm going to get into. Second clarification is with respect to the aliasing and Ether-AD pair EVI route, and what happens if we have a partial number of the routes from the multi-homing PE. So not all the multi-homing PEs send the Ether-AD pair EVI. What do we do? And what happens when none of it send it? What do we do? So we provide some clarification on that front to make sure there is no ambiguity there. And then the third area was with respect to the duplication, MAC duplication, which the section talks about duplication in context of when there is a duplicate MAC between 2 PEs. And then there was a question is what happens if there is a duplication within the same PE? So we provide one paragraph to clarify that as well. So next slide. So with respect to the mass withdrawal and Ethernet segment failure, so the draft was saying that when you send a mass withdrawal, then you rely on the age-out timer to send the individual MAC IP withdrawal to clean up the BGP table. So that needed clarification, because if you interpret that to wait for the MAC in the bridge table to age out, then that is going to cause black holing of locally switched traffic, okay? So that wasn't the intention. The intention is when there is a failure, Ethernet segment failure, and you're going to flush all the MAC addresses sitting behind that Ethernet segment, then you do the flushing, but the advertisement of the MAC withdrawal in the BGP, that needs to get a stagger between 0 and 5 minutes, which is a typical age-out timer. So we provided that clarification in this draft. Next slide. The next area was aliasing, and we use Ether-AD pair EVI for aliasing. And then there were some questions, what happens, there is a partial list, and what happens when somebody starts with the Ether-AD pair EVI, and then maybe in certain scenarios, they just want to remove that for whatever reason. What do we do? And what is a clear procedure? And we provided a paragraph to clarify that basically if there is a partial Ether AD pair EVI received from a subset of the multi-homing PEs that are participating in all active, then the ECMP needs to be done toward that subset only. And if you don't get, if there is no Ethernet pair EVI received by the remote PE period, then it is the ECMP is solely based on the MAC addresses received from the MAC addresses received from each of the multi-homing PEs. So if you have a multi-homing Ethernet segment and let's say there are 5 PEs involved in it, and none of them send either AD per EVI, and only one of them receives the MAC and learns the MAC and advertises the MAC. Basically, there is not going to be an ECMP. You will only send it to that one PE. So we wanted to make sure that is clear. So we captured that in here, and then on the next slide, we added a couple of additional bullets, to give an example. So hopefully the text in conjunction with the example makes the situation very clear. Next slide, and then this is the last clarification we did, and that is basically, again, duplication issue within a single PE. What do we do there? And if there is a duplicate and if there is a possibility of the loop, then that is a local implementation matter, and we don't need to specify. And if there is a legitimate MAC move, then we need to basically advertise it with the MAC with the new ESI, but without the MAC mobility extended community. It doesn't, because it is within the same PE, we don't need to increment the sequence number. So these are the clarification, which hopefully, makes it very clear and removes any ambiguity. Hopefully we can, everything is clear, and I think we can clear the WLCQ. Next slide. So basically the authors would like to request an expedited process through this, for this, because it's been there for a while. Okay, go ahead, please.
Ketan Dalaulikar, Cisco. I've shared this with the co-authors of the draft, but I would like to bring it to the working group attention that when 7432 came out, EVPN new address family was introduced. It did not have any text in there about error handling, that is RFC 7606. And EVPN introducing all this new route types and NLRI encoding changes, it would be good if the working group can cover that part as part of this BESS work. I can provide pointers.
Right.
Details
I think
of
it's
that.
a good idea to, for the sake of completeness, to add the error handling. And I'll take you on your offer of providing the text. Thank you.
I promise to provide pointers, not text.
3章的
So-
T， 好
Yeah,
All
go
right.
ahead.
3章的 T, I have some question about the flow label usage in the draft. And seems like there is some confliction between the attribute negotiation and the specification. And the negotiation is defined in section 7.11, and the specification is defined in section 18. Seems like there is some, there needs some clarification to make it more clear for the flow label portion. So I just resend the comments in the mailing list too. So we'd like to have more clarification on the flow label usage. Yeah.
Sure. Actually, that section, we visited that section a couple of times, and we basically, we had comments from John Scudder on that section, and we basically went through every single line of that section in great level of details to make sure that it is clear and no ambiguity. But let me look at your comments on the list and respond to it to see what you mean that is not clear.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any question, comments? Okay, we are good to go.
Very good. I think so. Okay, next. Is that the right one, or is it the IPA this one?
All right, so Jorge Rabadan, Nokia. So I'm gonna go through this draft. Well, it's been there for a while. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, I'm gonna basically talk about the latest changes in the last revision and next steps. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this draft, basically what it does is to take the dpath attribute that is defined in the EVPN IPVPN interworking draft. And in that draft is only used for like layer 3 routes, inter-subnet forwarding drafts. So what this document does is to take that attribute and explains how to apply it to layer 2 EVPN routes, in particular EVPN route type 2, 3, and 1. And the idea is that you can use this to detect control plane loops in the network when you have different domains and you have gateways in between. And also allows you to, to check the traceability of the routes. So if the routes are redistributed, throughout different domains, the dpath keeps appending the domain IDs through which the route has gone. So at the end, when you receive that on the final PE, right, you can check that a route came from different domain IDs, and you can compare that and use that in the best path selection if you receive the same route, with a different dpath. Next slide, please. So anyway, there were some comments about the examples in the draft. I think the procedures are clear, but there was a couple of examples in the draft where you could see that, sure, the procedures were explaining how to avoid or detect loops with in the control plane, but it showed that for bump traffic we could have a loop on those examples. So basically, we added in some text saying that, well, the document is basically about explaining the procedures related to dpath. And for bump traffic and those potential loops, you should apply other procedures for instance, in RFC 9014 for EVPN multipoint, or and there is also a similar one for VPWS. Apart from that, we updated references, typos, and things like that. Next slide, please. So anyway, we presented this multiple times, so there are implementations, and we really think it's ready for working group last call. Any questions?
You should probably do a quick show of hands on that, if I can make this work.
Okay.
So the question is, can you see this? Are you getting a show of hands? Can everyone see a show of hands on the client, on the MeetEcho client? Is this working? The question is, who has read this draft? In the tool, if you can respond in the tool, if you can see it. Yeah, I can see people responding in the tool as well. Okay, so I don't know what the overlap is between the people that put their hands up in the room and the people who are responding on the tool. Please just respond on the tool. Okay, so there's a good number of people who read it, which is good. That's good progress. Thank you.
Okay, next one is the IP aliasing draft, and same thing. It's been there for a while, so I'm just talking about the latest changes. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what this is about is basically about fast convergence and aliasing backup path in inter-subnet forwarding scenarios, where the Ethernet segment can be a set of Ethernet links or a layer 3 construct. So there are 3 use cases explained in the draft. Use cases 1 and 2, they make use of the Ethernet segment as a set of links, that is, as it was originally defined. And use case 3 defines a new version of an Ethernet segment, which is purely a layer 3 construct. So basically, we had a lot of discussion in the mailing list. So in revision 1 and 2, basically, we were addressing all the comments on the mailing list. We clarified, for instance, that scenarios in use case 3 are typically deployed using redundant BGP PEC sessions. Because in the examples, for the sake of simplicity, basically we just show one BGP session from the CE, but usually people deploy this with redundancy. We also clarified how in the third use case, this layer 3 Ethernet segment can be, the state can be up or down depending on whether you have a non-EVPN route for the CE's IP in the route table. And we also clarify that non-EVPN route can be static, local, or any other local route. We also clarified there was a comment about the route distinguisher of the IP verb compared to the MAC verb, because you can have now IP 80 per EVA routes and layer 2 80 per EVA routes. And we need to make sure that the route key is different. So we clarified that as well. And also there were comments about section 131 and the example. And people were saying, well, this example is showing IRB layer 3 interfaces, but this may well be used in non-IRB layer 3 links, which is true. So we added some text in that regard. Next slide, please. And with that, basically, we've presented this multiple times. We addressed all the feedback in the mailing list, and there are multiple implementations. We believe the document is stable enough and ready for working group last call.
I'm just going to do another poll on who has read this draft.
Through the tool or hands? Or
You need to do it through the tool. You can raise your hands, but also do it through the tool because your hands don't count.
I read it.
You can count. Well, obviously you read it. Okay, it's about the same number as the previous one, which is pretty good. Thank you.
Okay.
Next is. Oh, he's continuing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have a short review of a couple of individual drafts. So this one is the EVPN VPWS Gateway version 6. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, we're gonna do a short refresh, changes in the latest revisions and next steps. So what this is about is, it's a logical and simple use case. When you have CEs of the same EVPN VPWS service that are attached to different, to Ps in different domains and potentially different encapsulations, right? Typical use case could be you have an MPLS domain and a Service 6 domain. So in the Spring Working Group, there's a draft talking about interworking from a Service 6 and MPLS perspective, right? But yeah, it doesn't talk about the procedures on the service gateways themselves, right? So this is solving or explaining or specifying all those procedures for the case of EVPN VPWS on the service gateways, right? And it would be equivalent to the RFC 9014 that we have for the same thing, but for EVPN multipoint, only in this case for VPWS. So the solution is based on service gateway. So basically we instantiate a VPWS service on the service gateways, right? And we explain here how we redistribute the 80 per EVA routes, how you now have Ethernet segments that are local to each domain, and how we program the forwarding state and all that. We also explain or dedicate a lengthy test about redundancy options. So you can use an Anycast gateway redundancy on the service gateways, or you can also use the interconnect Ethernet segment concept that was defined originally in RFC 9014, only now applied to VPWS in this context. We also explain how to use DPath here. Next slide, please. So anyway, so in the latest revisions, pretty stable draft. So we added the security considerations and we updated the references and we tried to improve readability as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we presented this multiple times. Last one was in IETF 117. We addressed the feedback. There are existing implementations. We believe the document is stable enough to request working group adoption call. And we know the queue is long, but if you can add this to the queue, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Okay, and the second one is about the multicast egg. Egg stands for EVPN to EVPN gateway. Next slide, please. So this document is filling a gap that we had in the specifications for EVPN multicast procedures. So it's addressing two scenarios. So one for EVPN multicast in layer 2 scenarios and the other one for layer 3. So the first one is basically filling the gap that we had in the existing specifications. So we have RFC 9251, which is defining IGMP MLD proxy in EVPN broadcast domains, but in a single domain. We also have 9014, which is explaining the multi-domain service gateways, but only for unicast and bump traffic, right? So the missing piece is how you put both things together for IP multicast in a broadcast domain, interdomain. And the second thing is for layer 3 service gateways, right? So we have the EVPN, IPVPN interworking draft defining the procedures for interdomain for EVPN to EVPN and layer 3 unicast. And we have also RFC 9625, which is OISM, which is defining how to interconnect OISM or EVPN OISM domains to PIM and MVPN. But there is no explanation about how to interconnect an EVPN OISM to another EVPN OISM domain. So again, this is also addressing that, that piece. Next slide, please. So the document basically goes through the two scenarios and how to implement the service gateways in these two cases and how you deal with, doing the proxy of the SMET routes, how to deal with the, in the layer 3 case, what we call the DR, the egg DR or designated router, which is the gateway in charge of doing the proxy and extending or redistributing the SMET route to the other domain. And in layer 2, we also will use the interconnect Ethernet segment. It's pretty much the same thing. So hopefully the procedures are clear in the document. Next slide. So in version 3, we presented that in IETF 119. And ever since, well, we had 2 revisions. We clarified some of the procedures, specifically on the egg designated router election for the layer 3 egg. Basically, we're saying that the election should fundamentally follow what we have in the OISM RFC. But there were questions and discussions among the authors about, what happens if the gateways are connected to, to multiple domains, but the redundant gateways are not connected to the same domains, right? So basically, we are now enforcing certain things like the candidates for the EGDR, they must be attached to the same set of SBDs, right? And then the election produces a single winner for the SBD, who is responsible for redistributing the SMET routes into the common set of SBDs. So with this text, basically, we clarify that situation or that corner case. Next slide, please. Well, we presented this, again, multiple times. We addressed feedback. Of course, we welcome more feedback. There are implementations already. And same thing, we request for a working group adoption call. Any questions?
Okay, any questions on that? If not, I think it's Mankamana next.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. We can go to the next slide. So there was 9251. So 9251 is RFC. I think it happened last year, sometime last year. And we started, multiple vendors started doing the implementation, and we identified that there are some gaps, or there are some issues identified during implementation. One of them was multicast leave sync route and how we are processing that. And the second is wildcard route handling. So I won't be going too much detail into leave sync route problem statement, because there was a draft which was presented to IETF ago, where when we were syncing the leave sync route and we were syncing max response time to process the leave, there were some text missing about how exactly process this max response time. So section 6.2 has added a new paragraph, and that provides some more context about how exactly we are going to process. The second gap which we identified was wildcard route handling. So when we say wildcard route, in this picture, if we look at EVPN fabric, which is connecting 3 different other networks, so let's consider that they are PIM network or they are layer 3 network. In this case, if router A, which is connecting 2 other sites at different sites, wants to receive multicast traffic from all of those places, section 6.2, I think, or it was defining a wildcard that we can use star star, something similar which is defined in RFC 6625. Originally, these wildcard route procedures in 6625 was defined for MVPN. And MVPN, by default, they have address family awareness. It means that star star for V4 means we need V4 traffic. Star star for V6 means we need traffic for V6. But EVPN doesn't have any such procedures. So there is no address family identified within EVPN. So now we have added extra text here where we are providing 3 different choices, that if any site wants to receive all the traffic irrespective of V4 or V6, it can go with star star, and then it has 2 other mode of originating wildcard route, which is only to get IPv4 traffic or only to get IPv6 traffic. So next step is, as this is the 0th version of the BESS, if we have some more comment, if there are some more during implementation, if we figure out that there is more clarification needed, we would look for more discussion in the list and then update the draft. Any question? So the second draft which we are going to talk about is 6514 BIS. And the good thing is, just before we started the presentation, I figured out that the latest version of presentation didn't get uploaded, but it should be fine. So we will just recap. During IETF 119, Jeffrey did present that there are this particular draft, which is our RFC 6514, is base RFC for MVPN procedures. It has been there for ages. And there are good amount of implementation, good amount of learning. On top of 6514, there were multiple different feature extensions done. And there are a bunch of RFCs already defined on top of 6514. Apart from these new feature set, there were some of the problem statement as well, which Jeffrey did mention last time. And to handle these problems, there are multiple other drafts which are in process or which have been written to fix the problem. Now, that is where the question came that can we come up with a 6514 BIS, which will really clarify some of the missing points and solve some of the existing problems. And some more enhancement which we are looking for is how to handle a source active route. In fact, there was one more comment about when we are operating EVPN in multi-homing mode and it is integrated with MVPN. So when you have multi-homing source, how exactly MVPN procedures should be updated? And those procedures will also be a part of, or potentially can be part of these enhancement. The current change or the current version which you will see in section 911 is one of the problem statement which was defined for IPv6 core, that if we have IPv6 core and we are providing service or MVPN services on top of that, how exactly signaling is going to happen. The original 6514 section 11113, I think, defined the procedures, but it didn't really accommodate IPv6 addresses. So that particular part has been added here in section 911. And what we are looking into that maybe we will, based on working group feedback, that we may end up bringing some of the smaller feature set into 6514 BIS. And last time Jorge had one more question about how big the changes could be, or how big we want to make this spec, because 6514 itself is pretty big spec, and if we add some more data into it, it will really become a PhD thesis. So I think as a working group, we may decide that which part will make sense in this single document, so that it is easy for deployment, easy for anyone to read and make sense out of it. But we may still keep some of those other documents independent. So the next step is really having discussions and more collaborators. Prasad, you can go with your question.
Yeah, Prasad, Cisco Systems. Thanks, Mankamna. I think, you just mentioned it in the last slide that, already 6514 is a big document and we don't want to make it a PhD thesis. So I think that that needs to be emphasized, first point. And then second point, there are other items that I think that are a little bit missed out also with respect to the MLDP interworking and, other things which we'll have to reconsider, especially the MLDP interworking is only defined for V4. We don't have it for V6. So that's another point to consider as well.
Sure, thank you.
三几章的提议
Sorry.
三几章的提议 I think that if we want to disrupt bits, and we seems like we can do something like the survey for the implementing issues raised in recent years, because the RFC has been published for many years, and many vendors have implemented it. So I think that maybe a survey in the mailing list for every vendor to talking for the issues raised in the implementation may be good to the work too. So just a suggestion. Yeah.
So as a co-author, I'm not sure, maybe chairs will answer that we may not need formal survey, but definitely we are looking for input from people who have implemented it, who may have some comment based on prior experience, and if there are any places where we can do more simplification. So we have been using the MVPN procedures for last, let's say 10 plus years. So as a vendor, as an operator, we may have some input. So definitely we will look for that. But whether does it need to happen in a formal survey manner? That will be more of chair's call.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No, next is Krishna. Or is it yours? Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm going to talk about this dynamic overlay load balancing on behalf of my co-authors. Background, so I'm going to start talking about using this cross network picture, and then I'll come back to our typical VPN scenario. So in this span leaf network, when the traffic sourcing from the leaf 3 side and sourcing from leaf 2 side towards leaf 1 side, the leaf 2 and leaf 3, they could check their load information on the load link, local links, and to decide if the traffic should be sent through spine 3, spine 2, and spine 1. And that does not work well enough because spine 1 could have congestion. So leaf 3, leaf 2, their link to spine 1 is not congestion, but so they pick spine 1, and then you still have congestion. So in the a solution for this is that each spine switches, they will advertise their link load information to their immediate neighbors. So in this case, leaf 3 and leaf 2, they will know that spine 1 has a congestion link towards leaf 1. So they will choose their traffic to go through spine 2 and spine 3 instead. So this is a solution that has been discussed in the RTG working group and in the BGP IDR working group that have protocol extensions for BGP to distribute next hop information, and for the routers to use UDP to flood link node information to the just immediate next hop. So this concept is in the underlay, started in the underlay, but it can be extended to overlay as well. If we look at this EVMP example, we have PE1, P2, PE3, and we have a CE multi-home to PE2 and PE3. You can, at the overlay level, you can sort of thinking that the CE is one leaf device, and the two multi-homing egress P is the other spine switches, and then the P1 is another leaf switch. So the overlay traffic from P1 towards the CE, in this case, it can be a low balancing to P2 and P3. In BESS, we already have a document to talk about load balancing based on the bandwidth information on the PEC interface in this multi-homing scenario. But that is based on the static bandwidth information. It's not based on the dynamic, almost to the real time and link load information. So we are basically extending the concept from the underlay to this. We will advertise the link load information of the PEC interface to other PEs. That link load information is advertised to the other PE routers in the underlay, either using unicast to all the PEs or use a multicast that other PEs will join. So the key is that all the PEs will learn that the link load information of the multi-homing PEC link. And this link load information carries a local link ID that is also included in the Ethernet AD per ES routes using a new extended community. This additional information, the local link ID in the Ethernet AD per ES route, that allows the ingress PEs to tie the link node information that is flooded by a UDP to the Ethernet segment. Then when we do the aliasing procedure on the ingress PE1, we can do the dynamic load balancing. I will not get into the details here, but the idea is that it's similar to the underlay spine switch a span leaf network scenario, and we use this link ID that is carried in the link load flooding and in the Ethernet AD per ES route to make the connection. That's this works for the type 2 MAC IP route and type 5 routes when we are using a non-zero ESI. And then if you are doing the type 5 routes with a zero ESI, but then you are using overlay index and that overlay index is multi-homed, then the load balancing, considering the low dynamic load of the C links can still happen, but that is done through the recursion. There are some details here, but I will not get into, but these are all known mechanisms in the basic EVPN. And again, I want to emphasize that the signaling of the load information is in the underlay, not overlay, but it's dynamic directly to all the PEs. The P routers are not involved in this. This equally applies to layer 3 VPN. Here I have two pictures. The PE2 and PE3, well, CE is multi-home to PE2, PE3, and the PC has a network directly attached to it. That's in the upper right corner, or in the lower right corner, we have two CEs attached to the same network, but then each CE is connected to their own PE. It doesn't, eventually it's the same situation as far as PE2 and PE3 are concerned. They learned that prefix 192.0.2.0 through two next hops. And when PE1 can no balancing the traffic through PE2 and PE3, and that can be done based on the dynamic load information of the PEC interface. This is just like in the underlay case. The BGP advertisement for that routes will carry a next hop ID. The two Ps will advertise dynamic load informations of that PEC link, carrying that next hop ID. And then the P1 router here will be able to do the load balancing. Same concept, again, same concept as what we have presented in the RTG WG working group and in the IDR working group. It's just applied to the overlay. There are some other considerations. So we use the EVPN and the IPVPN example. It applies to the label unicast or even IP over any tunnels. Now it's just that the load advertisement will be from the tunnel egress to the tunnel ingress. Another point I want to mention here is that the link load information, also, in addition to signal the load information, we also have a bit to indicate if the link is up or down. So in this case, if a link goes down, that flooding by UDP directly from the forwarding pass and the handling of that information at a forwarding pass could happen faster than a BGP route withdrawal that goes through your routing engine and then BGP machinery. So that it could achieve faster reroute as switchover as well. This is a byproduct. It's not why we started with this, but it's just a nice byproduct. Next steps, basically we want to get some comments and suggestions so that we can improve this or maybe fix some problems that we missed. Any comments?
Himanshu from Siena. Does this work in reality? Because when you have a multi-point connection, when you send this link load information to all the PEs that are sending the traffic to this dual home PEs, and they are all sending the traffic, and if they all slow down, throttle back, right? Then again, you would have now other link getting loaded, and you can then keep flipping back and forth. And by the time they receive and send the traffic, it is probably stale information. You can go, zigzag.
So if that is not a problem, then it's a problem not only to this overlay, but it's happened to the other concept as well in the underlay as well. But my answer to that is that this will this affects how you do the load balancing. So let's just say that you have existing traffic. You already noticed that you fill up one link already to 60%, and then you need to put on additional traffic. And then you will see that, okay, I know this link has already 60% loaded. I know there's another link that's only 10% loaded. So I'm going to choose the other one. So it's not that we are constantly switching traffic back and forth. It's really about how you place on new traffic.
But you are talking about the remote PEs, right? Like in your diagram, the PE1, there could be PE1 and 1.1 and 1.2 and all those PEs that are ingress PEs sending it to those two egress PEs, right? Those, the PE2 and PE3, they each individually, because you are blasting that UDP. Is it that UDP linked information unicast or it is sent to everyone, right? For the link load?
Link load
And all those ingress Ps will start throttling and instead start sending the traffic to other one. It is that again, at individual node level, they don't know what other nodes are doing, how balancing they are doing. And in reality, I'm not sure whether, and plus these are all transient,
right? So I think my earlier answer still holds. Let's say that P1 is sending his traffic through P2, and now P2 for some traffic, and then the P4 comes in. He needs to send more traffic, and he sees that P2's linker is already going up because some other routers have been sending through there. So the P4, which was not drawn there, they will start picking P2. So that kind of dynamic I believe it will play out. It's really about how you place the traffic on which link. I think it should work out, but if there is a problem, then indeed we have a problem even in the underlay case as well. We can discuss that in a generic way. Well, I'll go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Some modeling is required, I guess.
Okay. While Himanshu was talking, it just reminded me of the question. You're assuming the link utilization is, are you assuming it is symmetric, that the forward, from the forward direction and the reverse direction are basically can be treated equally?
In this case, I think the metric, we will not use the reverse metric. So let's see if I can go back to the picture. So in this case, the P2 will advertise its P2, P3 link to other Ps like PE1, right? So that's the load on the P2 to C link. So, and that's the
is it the load that it receives, or is the load that it transmits?
It transmits.
The load that it transmits, and okay. And it can measure that. It can measure that load. I mean, it can. On the receive side, I can see that it can, typically the counters are on the receive side. So it would be interesting to just ensure that the counter on the transmit side also is there. But yeah, it has to be on the transmit side. That was my point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I took that for granted. I didn't think further, but now you reminded me.
All right.
Sandy ZT, I think this work is really needed because we face some problems in the data center deployment because we need the overlay convergement as fast as the underlay convergement. So we think this draft does make sense. But I have some question about the L3 root part because the PE as plays a role in the overlay, right? I think that if PE will also play the role in the underlay part, so if the PE will play the roles in both underlay and overlay, how can we distinguish the notification? What's this notification for? It's for underlay or just for overlay? Yeah.
So conceptually, at the overlay, this procedure solution here will allow PE1 to choose either PE2 or PE3 to send the traffic. That's the overlay. And underlay, and then they just say that PE1 choose PE2 to send traffic. And then in the underlay, PE1 can decide which underlay path is going to take. So the two part will work together. On different part of this traffic forwarding. This is a little bit hand waving here. I did mention it in the draft as well. Yeah. So they play a different role. Yeah.
Okay. So for the underlay part, sorry, it's no relationship with this draft, but I have some confusing about it. About the underlay part, if only the spine switch will send the notification to the origination leaf switch, or PE can also send the notification.
So when I talk, let me go back to this slide here. So in this case, the leaf switch here really do not need to send their information because their next there is no need for them to choose which downstream interface to take unless you have the if a server is multi-home to different leaves, then indeed then they will need to send. I'll take that back. So if anytime you have multi-pass to something, then you could use the advertise the link information. But the key point here is that that load advertisement does not need to be reflooded. In the closed network case, you only need to advertise one hop away, and every hop will just only need to care if the next hop link is congested or not. That is, I believe that is explained in the IDR draft talking about next hop, or it may be talked about in that adaptive routing framework document. I forgot which one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Are we done? I think we need to move on now. Krishna, I think you're up next.
Right. So I'm Krishna Swami, presenting this EVPN per flow DF draft on behalf of my co-authors, Ali and Lucas. So before I start, right, so I want to give just a quick background on what is about the designated forwarder, right? The designated forwarder is a PE device that is responsible for forwarding the bump traffic to a multi-homed CE, right? And this is based on specific VLAN for a particular Ether segment. So RFC 7432 BIS, right? It defines the default DF election algorithm, calls it as service carving. Here, the DF election algorithm makes use of VLAN mod of number of the PE devices which are participating in that redundancy group. And the Ethernet segment route, which carries this ESI information, the PE devices are going to make use of this information to select the DF. Now, what is the problem, or what is the motivation that we need to do the per flow DF election, right? So the DF election algorithm, specified in RFC 7432 BIS, has some limitations. So since it is a V mod of N, right? So VLAN mod of number of PE devices. So all traffic flows within a VLAN will choose the same PE router. Okay, so what it means is if there are, number of flows on that particular VLAN is higher than the others, then it could congest the link between the PE and the CE. Okay, so that's the main the problem statement that we want to solve. So what are the benefits of per flow DF election, right? So as the name indicates, the distribution of this bump traffic is based on a per flow manner. Okay, so what it means is, within a same VLAN, we could have a n number of flows, and we could end up with DF, a different PE per flow. Now, this, the per flow DF election, it calculates a hash based upon the packet, the header, right? So now this hash is calculated at runtime. Now, this will avoid, some of the reshuffling, the issues which have been addressed in some of the other draft, like HRW. Okay. So the crux of the per flow DX selection algorithm is, right? So as I mentioned, the hash is calculated on the packet header at the runtime. Now, if there are n number of PEs which are part of that redundancy group, then this hash mod of n is what is going to be used, and right. Then so yeah, RFC 7232 BIS already defines how to get this the ordinal I. So we just make use of the same procedures. So one common thing is, right, all the redundancy group PEs must use the same hashing function. Okay, so we will see in the subsequent slides on what does that mean. Okay, so how does this solution work, right? So RFC 8584 defines the DF extended community, right? It defines how we can carry a DF algorithm as a part of this extended community. So we are proposing a new DF algorithm type per flow. Now this will be carried as a part of the ES route. Okay. So 8584 already defines some of the procedures, and the same equally applicable to the per flow DF also, right? So, and also a PE can join or leave a redundancy group. Now the RFC 7432 BIS has a DF election timer mechanism, and also to build this ordinal list, so that would be leveraged. So if between the two multi-homed PEs, if they don't come to a common understanding of supporting this per flow DF, then it will fall back to the default modulo-based DF. Okay, so as a next step, right, we need to add some more details to solution and few other sections. And also, as I mentioned, the hashing algorithm has to be same on all the multi-homed redundancy group PEs. Now, if there is, if we are operating with a different vendor routers, then we might need to even exchange this, what kind of hash algorithm that we have to, that to be used. So that's something we will update it in the upcoming slides and upcoming draft. So yeah, we require more input from the working group. All right.
Jorge Rabadan, Nokia. Thanks for this, Krishna. My main comment is, yeah, I have a few comments that I'll discuss with you later, but the main thing is you talk about per flow DF election, but it's really per BOM flow.
Yeah, that's correct. I think, yes, this is mainly for the BOM traffic, yes.
Okay, that was my understanding.
Okay.
And if that is so, so we have the per multicast flow DF election draft, which deals with this load sharing for IP multicast flows. And if you take care of that, which is, when you have a lot of BOM in your broadcast domain, is typically because IP multicast. And if you take care of that with that draft, I was wondering what the motivation is for doing this for BOM traffic in general, because usually there shouldn't be much unknown traffic. There shouldn't be much broadcast traffic in the sense that in EVPN we try to, do ARP suppression and ND suppression and all that. So yeah, I was wondering what the motivation was for this.
Yeah, so the one is, the efficient load balancing, right? And there were some scenarios where, the router is booting up, and at that point of time, if the ARP and ND suppressions are not enabled, then if the MAC is not learned, right? So there could be a lot of unknown unicast traffic, which will be, triggered as a BOM, and that's the case that we are trying to optimize.
So you see a potential issue which is really transient, but in a stable network, there shouldn't be an issue to do with this? Or?
Yeah, probably, in the stable network, it might not be a problem. Yeah. And also specifically for L2 multicast kind of a traffic where, we don't have an SMET capabilities. So there also that will also make trying to use the BOM channel to send the traffic, L2 multicast.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Himanshu from Siena. Exactly the same comment, but the BOM traffic shouldn't be sustained traffic, right? Yeah. And the whole idea of ARP suppression and all that stuff is that you don't want to waste the core network bandwidth, right? Because you are sending it to broadcasting the traffic, and you chew up the precious resources within the core network. Mm-hmm. Unless it is sustained traffic, I don't know whether it should be as useful for this.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's same.
Yeah,
point
as I said, right, the L2 multicast
well.
traffic could be the one, right?
Yeah.
So that's something we have to look at it also. Yeah, not just the broadcast or unknown unicast, but the L2 multicast too. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Next up is Arjun.
Yeah. I'm Adrian from Untitled. I will introduce the layer 3 access for EVPN on behalf of our quarters. So before I introduce the layer 3 access, let's look back to some of the existing layer 2 accessible interface. I think if you're familiar with the RFC, you're also familiar with the layer 2 access EVPN services. There are 3 kind of layer 2 access interfaces. For example, VLAN based, VLAN bundle, and VLAN bundle awares. The reason that we propose the layer 3 access EVPN service is, for layer 2 access EVPN service, the customer must be connected to the P via the layer 2 environment. But actually, in our network, most customers locate behind the main network, which is the layer 3 network. So current layer 2 solution cannot be used by these customers. So we propose the layer 3 access EVPN service. Here is the solution. For the customer located behind the main, we want to use one logical interface connect the CE and the backbone PE together, so we can identify the logical system as a LSI, logical system identifier, the LVC, which is similar with the VLAN identifier. So the LSI can be used to distinguish the customer's different branch from each others, and keep their traffic isolated within the backbone EVPN. For correspond the layer 2 access EVPN services, there are also 3 type of layer 3 access EVPN services. For example, the LSI based and LSI bundle and LSI bundle aware service interface. For the previous two scenarios, I think it is simple to implement. There is no any requirement for the protocol extension, but for the layer 3 LSI aware bundle service, because we want to keep the traffic within the backbone network isolated. So we must keep the LSI information within the packet itself. So we must, but there currently for the VXLAN encapsulation, there is no currently there is no space to encapsulate the LSI information. So we propose the control plane extension and the data plane extension for the LSI aware bundle service. Here is the data plane extension. We extended the VXLAN header based on the RFC 7348. So we define a new flag, and the new flag can indicate that some reserved bit can be used to indicate the existence of LSI. This is the data plane extension. And for the control plane extension, we newly defined one new type of ESI type. So this ESI type can be used to transfer the correspond the LSI information of the corresponding peers. So and we also discuss online or offline with experts from the BESS, and we think the scenario is clear even if we compared with the layer 2 access EVPN service. So we also clarified some questions on the list. I think if the expert has other questions for the scenario and the solution, we can discuss on the list. If there are no other questions, I think we would like to ask the WJ to begin a working group last call. Okay, Ali.
Can you go to the first figure? Yeah, this one.
Here, maybe.
So frankly, is I mean, from reading the draft, it is not quite clear what you're trying to do. But let me venture a guess. Are you trying to backhaul the traffic from CE to the PE?
Yeah.
In a point-to-point connection?
In the backbone, the customer rent one EVPN service, but its branch located behind the different mains. So we want to connect the customer via the logical line.
The man. And then this is a bit different from the draft. You have the MSE notion in here. Does the MSE do VXLAN encap?
No. We currently we propose.
So how does it send all the VLAN traffic, all the VLAN tagging that we have through the man if it doesn't do VXLAN encap?
Currently, we want to build the VXLAN site shoulder by the CE between the CE device and the backbone PE directly.
So CE does the
encapsulation.
So CE is actually a PE if it does the VXLAN encapsulation, because CE needs to understand both the underlay and overlay. Whichever device that does VXLAN encap is PE. So it's not a CE that you're talking about, it's a PE. And then, however, if I venture a guess, that CE does the VXLAN encap without running a control plane, without running a EVPN control plane. Is that what you're trying to get at?
No. The control plane extension is mainly for the backbone. Backbone need to. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm talking about between CE and PE.
No. From the customer CE to the backbone PE, we just build one point-to-point VXLAN encapsulation.
Very good. If it is point-to-point VXLAN encap, why can't you use the existing VXLAN RFC 7348?
Yeah.
And you don't need to do anything else. I mean, you don't need to define LSI, because that RFC provides, it gives you the ability to put VLAN after the VXLAN header.
Because the CE is connected to the backbone PE via the VXLAN, and we want to keep the traffic within backbone EVPN to be isolated.
Yeah. If you put it, if you have a VLAN is a delimiter. It gives you all the isolation you need.
Yeah, but you.
I mean, why do you need to define something else?
I know, because the VLAN is used in the first consideration. VLAN is used in the layer 2 environment, but currently we are the CE connected via the layer 3, and the second is the space.
We just said that the CE understands the VLAN because CE is a delimiter between the customer network and the man. So it needs to know the VLAN, and you're mapping each of the VLAN to the LSI that you're talking about. I'm saying, why do we need to use a new encap? Why not the existing encap?
Ali, can we take that to the list? Because there's also a couple more. We were like really out of time.
No, that's fine. It just, I'm saying.
There's also an issue here of that extension.
I can explain more in detail in the mail.
Just one final comment. We have
really quick.
Tons, very quick.
One sentence.
We have tons of information on the point-to-point EVPN. It's called VPWS and FXC. Tons of information there already.
Okay.
Okay, I will respond to you in the mail. Okay.
Do you want to be really quick?
No, we can take it to the list
Okay.
because, yeah, we're running out of time. That's okay. Thank you.
Gunter.
Yeah, one last comment, actually, a process thing. So VXLAN is a protocol not owned by IETF, so we cannot really directly change anything on it.
Yeah, so there's just some history here. VXLAN was published through the independent stream. Okay, it's not an IETF-owned protocol. There has been some extensions proposed within this working group, and there was a process kind of agreed to republish it amongst the original VXLAN authors, republish it as, I think, an informational draft. Yeah. And we can only wait for that process to happen before we can potentially make any changes. But it doesn't really those changes don't necessarily belong in this working group anyway.
I know.
They're either in NVO3 or the routing area working group, depending.
Yeah, for the extension of the forwarding plan, I think we should need the approval of the other working group or other streams. I know. First, we want to discuss the solution is suitable within this group.
Okay, but I don't think we should consider working group adoption until this process has been sorted out. Okay, I think unfortunately, we're out of time. If the agenda, we have got through all of the ones that we're committed to, and there were two other drafts that were, if time permits, and unfortunately we didn't. Maybe if you'd like to send a summary to the list, if you wanted to talk about that, would very much help. But Kia.
Yeah, I can take because I can take my draft to the mailing list. We've got 5 implementations, so my short comment is I'd request working group chairs to issue a working group adoption call. Simple as that.
Thank you. Yeah, apologies for that. It happens sometimes. And hopefully see you in Madrid, which will probably be just as hot. Maybe.